Part
Right.
2 of youth sports, piggybacking off of the What Bakes Your Noodle series. I think I was in a mood when we had that idea. So what more that bakes my noodle than some entitled little shits playing
Oh my
games for no damn reasons. So why not? Let's go ahead and roll with it. No, but seriously, um, we wanted to bring on somebody who has a ton of experience. Coach Mark is here to assist with that. Who, I have experience training and modestly coaching softball, thanks to him. But I've spent all of my experience being just on the training side of things. And, Sarah's just now getting into the travel world. So when I say youth sports, I think we're specifically talking about travel sports and the cult that is. So, Mark, welcome. And
Thank you for
if you
having me.
could give everyone kind of the like what your background is and who you are, what you done, and
All right,
dot dot dot.
super quick background. I am an administrator, both coordinator, supervisor in the Park District world since 1996.
Damn.
I coached travel baseball from 1997 till about 2003. Um, got involved with the Wheatland Athletic Association in 2010. I started their flag football league, stayed on their board until 2021. I'm sorry, stayed on the flag football board until 2021. Joined the Spikes in 2013, became the director of Spikes in 2019, and just finished coaching this past July of 2023.
So not your first time, not your
Oh
first
wait,
rodeo.
I left out. I am also the varsity softball coach at Aurora Central Catholic High School.
Because you're
Wow.
just addicted to the stress.
That is a lot.
I can't let go.
So as I was trying to explain to Sarah, she was asking me about, because her husband did he volunteer to head coach? Or
We kind of thought he was going to be an assistant
yeah.
coach. Then they called. They're like, "Hey, your kid's on this team. We need a coach."
I believe that's called railroading.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So before we get, I guess, into the thick of it all in terms of an audience, just to set the stage here a little bit, right? I have a very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not specific, but I've a three-pronged approach, a three-headed monster, if you will, with what I've experienced as a parent, as a coach, and then of course, as a trainer. So I'm kind of like, well, I can understand where one person's coming from, and then I can't understand why, with all of the things I've experienced, why someone would do that sort of thing. But why people choose to spend the kind of money that they spend. I know first and foremost the money you spend on a travel sport. Okay, so if you're a parent out there, for right now, I think for the majority of parents, we're talking to you people. For those of you who are willing to spend that kind of money, it's not a rec, it's not volunteer, it's not just the neighbors going halvesies on some bow nets and things like that. With that in mind, Mark, what would you say are two benefits, the main benefits? Why would you tell somebody, a parent, well, I'm going to get my kid into some travel sports versus, the YMCA or something?
I think the primary reason is to provide the opportunity for your child to compete at a higher level and to feed their desire to be at that level. Secondly, for me, it's been a little bit about routine and discipline for my children, and they've kind of fed that over their time participating in travel teams.
No challenges that people don't give you any kickback with the whole discipline part of things? Surely, like, people are going to disagree with you.
Well, of course, you're in the travel world. You're not going to make everybody happy, so I believe there's got to be a little bit of discipline because if the goal is to play at a level beyond high school, then you're going to have to get addicted to understanding you have to live by a schedule if you want to compete at the next level.
Uh-huh.
And for boys, in many cases, or even more women now at the professional level beyond the college sport.
What if they're next level? Like, what if Sarah, how old's your son?
7.
I mean, shit.
Oh,
What's his next level?
8 days a week now.
He,
So exactly. So what about that?
yeah, I mean, he's been playing hockey since he was 3. He got on the ice for the first time when he was 3 because he was begging us, like literally begging us. He saw a video of his friend playing hockey and he started crying. He's like, I just want to play hockey. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get you in hockey then. My husband was really hesitant because he played hockey. So he was nervous about making Easton feel like he had to play hockey just because Aaron did.
Uh,
And, but he begged us. So we put him in and he loved it. I mean, and now this year he kind of outgrew the house league. So in the hockey world, at least, you through learn to skate, you learn how to stand on the ice and how all those little things that you need to be on the ice. You start in the house league where you kind of get your bearings on how to play in a game. They're like little mini 3-on-3 scrimmages on half ice. And then
is it the same organization?
It's the same organization all the way through. We've stayed with the same organization at least.
Yeah.
But he grew out of that house league. He was getting to the point where he was ready to move on. And so the next step then is travel. And he's at a really, really young age still. But he's skating 5-6 days a week. And it's never like, Easton, you got to go to hockey. He's never like, oh, he's like, all right, let's go. He's excited about it every day.
So 7 years old, Mark, is that too young?
It depends on the sport. And hockey is one of those sports where I believe they've got to learn how to skate at a young age. And if your child wants, like Easton, wants to compete and keep going, you feed that need and see where it goes. And, maybe he burns out at 10U, 11U, or whatever the age divisions are in hockey. But if they really love it, then it just keeps going. I know, right?
No, I mean, I have sat and thought, because there's already been a couple times that we've had to pull him from school to like go to a tournament or something. Yeah. First grade. This kid he's in second grade this year, but last year he's in first grade. I'm like, we have to take him out of school early to go to a hockey tournament. At the time he was 6. I'm like, he's 6 years old.
So
there's a lot of kids. Yes. And there's a lot of kids though, that when they do walk on as a 7-year-old, they're in the learn to skate programs with 3 and 4-year-olds. So it's like, and they probably catch up a lot faster than a 3-year-old does, granted, but still it's there. I think there is, at least in the hockey world, some type of pressure to be like, this is the age that they get in it. And this is just, if you want to play, you got to play early. I don't know.
How does your husband feel about having him pulled out of school to go play hockey? Because I believe there's 2 sides of that answer.
Like I said, Aaron has played his whole life. I don't think it surprised him like it surprised me. Like he would not like, he'd be mad if I wanted to like take Easton out of school to like go to the pumpkin patch for the day or something. But he wouldn't, or sometimes he's like, do you have to schedule their appointments during the day? I'm like, well, yeah, that's when the appointments are. But for hockey, it was like, well, that's just how it works.
Well, I just know as a parent, as a father, my wife was the same way. It was leery about the kids being pulled out of school, where I'm just like, yeah, let's go.
Well, yeah, that's what it is. Whatever.
Expectations. Mark, would you say that managing said expectations is like a major challenge more for the parents of the kids or more of the parents of what they expect from the program and all that it will entail? Because parents, if you're just getting started, I got news for you. You'll spend a couple of grand in dues only. That doesn't count travel, doesn't count fundraising, shit. So from the financial end, there's a ton.
But what does that mean? What you're getting into.
What does that mean?
Depending on the program you're getting into, what kind of practice requirements are you looking at? Is it 2 days a week, 3 days a week? Is it 4 days a week? Is it every weekend? Are you traveling? Look at all the different aspects of the team you're going to and decide if that's the commitment you want to make. Because if you get into it and you're not willing to sacrifice practice time or a lot of windshield time driving to different locations to play, you're going to burn out quick as a parent, and you may burn out your own child as a parent.
And is it a popular
ready
thing?
For that commitment?
Is it a popular thing where people would commit to a team that isn't even remotely close to where they live? Like they're willing to drive to 30 miles away for an organization because of the program. And all that it will entail. Because parents, if you're just getting started, I got news for you. You'll spend a couple of grand in dues only. That doesn't count travel, doesn't count fundraising, shit. So from the financial end, there's a ton.
Yeah.
What level of competition or the promise of exposure at certain ages or the promise of, athletic development. Is
If
that
you would
something
have
that you've
asked,
seen?
if you asked that question 20 years ago, I would tell you, if you're driving more than 20 minutes to go play for a team, you're crazy. And today, people are driving an hour just to play with the teams that they're on. So the the nature of travel sports, the culture of travel sports has changed significantly in the last 20 years, where people are finding the program or the team organization that they want their child to play for, and they're willing to travel. I know kids right now that are traveling to Iowa and Omaha, Nebraska, just to be on certain softball teams.
Jeez.
And that's great for their kids, but that's what they want, and that those programs provide what they're looking for.
What is the
Do you,
draw for that?
Probably some exposure on the collegiate level, or in some cases, maybe they don't feel that the teams in the area are good enough for their child. So, there's both that pulls in two directions. Out, hey, we want this program, or my kid is, she is way too good. None of these teams around here are good enough for my kid. They go somewhere else, and that's just that's the nature of travel sports right now.
Uh-huh.
And there's even kids and teams that the only time their kids ever get together is when they travel to Kansas City for a tournament, or Oklahoma City for a tournament, or the only time those kids are together is when they meet at a location for a tournament. There's programs that draw kids from all over the country. And
How do they justify
that?
I just don't understand why. Why?
That I don't know.
I mean, that's just, oh my God, that's crazy. How do politics play into that sort of thing? You think it's because, my best friend is, sugar daddy cousins with somebody's baby's daddy that played in the bigs,
I'm sure there's connections that get people into teams. So there's a certain level of politics. But I think if you're one of those people traveling great distances to play, your child is probably that good to play at that particular level. Or at least you're going to find out real quick that they're either ready or they're not ready. And that, again, that's another thing that's a part of it, is figuring out where your kid fits in. And some programs work and some don't.
What do the tryout processes look like? Because Sarah was talking about, you said something about they had like teams will have A team, B team, fuck out of here team, right? We'll find another organization team. Thank you, come again team. You really should think about rec only team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how does that I guess the anxiety behind it.
Oh,
You guys both talked about your experiences with pulling the kids out of school. I mean, I am actually thankful for that. The mental health day, or that when I was in Illinois, at least the Oswego East High School had the 5 days. Wasn't it? The school district gave you 5 mental health days or something like that for a semester. Like, I think there's a precedent for that, because just too many kids are turning to the wrong solutions for their problems. They don't have the right kind of care and attention. So, sports when I was growing up used to be a thing that was my outlet, that let me kind of not do the bad stuff, let me kind of hone in on something else. But I don't know if that was because of the times or,
yeah, but when you were a kid, did you go outside and play with your friends all day long, go out to a park, and you guys are running your own football games, lob league baseball games, or what have you? Because that's what's different. One of the things that's different now compared to when we were kids is there's less of that. Kids just going out and disappearing for the entire day and playing on their own. And, that kind of that makes a workout for keeping up with the sport that you're in. And now it's, all right, there's professional training where, all right, we can send our kid to, goalie lessons and hitting lessons and pitching lessons, and you name it, there's a lesson for it. And they're doing less of that with their friends or out in the community parks, and more of that in private facilities, which, again, travel sports kind of, as it's blown up, look at all these private facilities that are out there now. They're everywhere. years ago, there would just be a pop-up one here or there. Now there's probably one in every community, a private instruction place, training facility where you can take your kid to work out instead of just going down the street to your park.
That's a really interesting point. I've never thought of it like that before. I mean, because when I think about it, like my kid will like play hockey in the driveway with people every once in a while, but it's not like they're organizing games in the cul-de-sac or something. When I know my husband talks about when they were little, they'd have hockey nets in the street and they literally play street hockey all day, like actually play, get six guys. And
you move the hockey net out of the way when the cars come.
Yes. And that's what they did. And we live in a cul-de-sac, like it's a dead end. They could play in the street all they want, really. And I mean, I don't see really any of that. And we have a lot of kids.
I think it's still going on. There's still kids that are playing, but it's not in the great numbers that
it used to be.
That it was when many, many years ago, when there was less of these outlets for kids to go to go and play on their own without mom and dad or a coach telling them what to do.
Yeah.
So what about you said the whole point about the training outside of a program and putting in the extra work and bridging gaps between talent levels and things like that. And I mean, I don't have siblings. And I lived like 3 miles away from anyone else back then. And it was through the city. So I wasn't exactly able to, until I was older, like 13, 14, I wasn't allowed to walk across the city of Chicago to some random, park. So like when I was outside playing with myself, let me rephrase, I'm outside playing by myself. That gets old after a while, but it kind of fueled me to kind of going. But in the city, we didn't have, at least that I'm aware of, I don't remember any facilities like you're saying nowadays. They're everywhere. Everybody's got one. Everybody's an expert. There's YouTube graduates that just out there trying to do things. And the downside on the training end is that parents have this entitlement, this expectation to them that I'm going to pay for this program, make my kid should be, the rock star X and X player, or you know what I mean? So like when I took over training, you gave me that opportunity with Stoppel organization with Spikes. Like the same thing I said to Brian Eck over at EBC was, I'm going to do my best to give you the best possible healthy functioning athlete I can. If they still suck shit at softball, that is your fault. But they will at least be an athletic shit sucker. I'm out of it after that. I'm going to draw on it because I can't. I don't have the experience that you guys do. And I was blessed to be on a coaching staff of folks that have played and understand and know all of those unwritten things about that fine line between parenting and coaching. And believe me, there's a lot of them. So how do you manage that part of the game where everybody is, well, why don't you have them do this? Or I read about this, or, a friend of mine used to do that. And that's for every sport. Cause I know, Sarah, you were talking too about how come how come the coaches there don't address form over function?
Yeah. And I don't know that it's even necessarily the coaches because, like my husband who coaches, he doesn't have like a vast knowledge of the human body and what makes you able to turn quickly and stuff like, they do a lot of the drills that you would see in a hockey game where they're actually practicing hockey skills. But then it's like and I think this is more of a program thing than a coach thing. At what point do you bring in somebody who can see, yep, that kid's taking the tight turn like this, but if his this, and that were stronger, he'd be able to take that tight turn faster and more accurately. Whereas I think, at least from what I've seen, a coach knows how to teach the tight turn, but not the mechanics that go into the tight turn. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I guess how do you manage that when you're
and are there common injuries that you see, season in and season out?
We'll do the injuries last. When it comes to how do I manage that end of it, over the course of time, I spent the first years in travel ball coaching, trying to teach everyone the basic fundamentals so they would have a good base to build up from. Then once we kind of hit a point where I felt we had a very good team, we can compete with top level teams, then we set the bar of expectation higher where we wanted to, if you want to compete at this level, we've got to do this. And I put that expectation onto the players. And then we were lucky enough to have people like you come along into our program that can actually handle some of that physical training, the body movements that I'm not qualified to teach, that can improve their performance. And while you're doing that, we're working on, all right, what are the little things we can do to correct in our game that those little things make the big difference in winning and losing generally in the long term with competitive sports. In terms of the injuries I've seen most are generally labrum, shoulder labrum injuries and elbow injuries, just because coaches at the younger levels, there's a lot of great coaches, but there's also coaches that do not understand how to teach throwing fundamentals and techniques. And the kids develop an incorrect throwing style that without any correction, or they get to a point where it's almost impossible to correct, they've increased their chances of injury. And by the time they get to the high school age or when their body's mature, they're doing it wrong. And now they're really damaging their shoulder or their elbow because they just don't know how to do it right and they can't do it right.
Yeah. And I worked with Chris on a lot of the stuff that he wrote for you guys and that he did with you guys. And I remember, I mean, there were we did probably 15 drills, maybe more. And we only had a ball for one of them. And I remember he'd set up all these cones and he'd do all these things. And he's like, okay, now how does that relate back to the game? And he's asking me. I don't know softball very well at all. But it was cool to see that parallel of these things that he was doing that seemingly had nothing to do with catching a ball and throwing it and running bases. But when you really think about the mechanics of what he was doing around those cones and how he was making sure that the player would be strengthening their hip functioning and things like that, that could translate back to those common movements that you see in softball.
That's not to say also that if your kid is just a funky wonky, that he or she is necessarily, head, shoulders, knees, and toes should be working a certain way in terms of efficiency, but everybody's body is different. You know what I'm saying? So when I wrote those drills and programs, they're around knowing that, if I'm going to train any longer than 20 minutes, 7 minutes into it, I'm going to lose all, like 80% of the kids are going to start wandering off, especially if they're younger, they're not going to pay attention very well. So I have to pound it home early, the movements that can become routine. So when they forget, they don't forget. I don't care what happens last. I care about getting it there and just letting the rest kind of, falling in place. That's why dynamic warm-ups are so damn important, and consequently almost all the things that are boring, people forget.
And you bring up a good point about keeping their attention. Even through the high school ages, you're right. After 7 or 10 minutes of doing something, they start to shut off. And if you don't change or adjust what you're doing to keep that attention or to turn it into a game or a competition within what you're trying to teach, then they just shut it down. And then those are the kids that they don't go through all the motions. And generally, over the long term, they're more likely to get injured than the kids that have stuck with it the whole way through. But keeping their attention, that's key.
I used to be a teacher before I was a trainer, so kids I can keep kids. I know the tips and tricks to keep kids' attention. Aaron's never been a teacher before, so this is, and he's coaching 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. So that's been one of the hardest things for him and that I don't think he necessarily super expected is to keep their attention because they're busy.
I'll tell you, it's 3 times a year. I coach a T-ball class of 3, 4, and 5-year-olds.
Oh my God!
For the sole purpose of remembering what it's like to have to maintain patience and how to keep attention for 45 minutes to an hour of 12 to 20, little kids that can't keep their attention for 30 seconds. So I do that to myself 3 times a year. Just to
are a saint.
Just to stay level. Just to remember what it's like.
It's, yeah. I wish I could skate. I'd be on the ice. Be like, you listen.
So I guess if I was going to give a parent a do and a don't with regard to training and expectations of what really to expect from their kids in terms of relative to playing time when it comes down to it, I'd say, the knowledge is out there. feel free, man. Go after it and go get it. But find some, and assuming you don't know what the hell you're talking about, which you probably don't, especially if your ass is on the couch, like, come on. Okay. Unless you're teaching a kid how to do Cheetos curls, stop it. Okay. Don't do it. This is not going to help anybody. But do your homework on some things and understand not just how an exercise is executed, but why it's executed. So when the child starts to have some issues with A, B, and C, you can trace back and figure out what it is and what's causing the issue. Now, if you're a parent who doesn't understand that concept at all, and you ask the child, okay, what does this feel like? Or how fast do you want to throw? How fast do you want to run? Or, what's your exit velo on a slap shot? Like, tell me about, and they don't know, have them find their favorite player, ask them why, and reverse engineer from there. And then you can start to figure, if you start typing that player's name, I'm sure you'll figure out finding training programs and such. But then you have to go and have that info cross-check to make sure that it's the right thing to do. What I'll say is an absolute no-no is boot camp style shit for a kid at any sport. Honestly, I never was a fan of just running somebody till they puke. The first session of my last go around with spikes, that first session, Mark, you remember that I had 4 or 5 kids puke in the first 2 hours. That was not my intention. That happened because they decided to eat shit and chips for breakfast. That's what you get. You know what I'm saying? So make sure that your kids are on a solid athletic diet and don't go too hard, too fast when you don't know what you're doing. So as a coach and a director and a parent yourself, Mark, with regard to how to approach talking to a coach or how to console a child after a loss or something, when something didn't go their way from a discipline at home style type thing, like what would you say to them as, listen, parents, if you're a first time parent, do this. If you're not,
don't attack your coach with anger.
But it's always your fault.
Number one.
As a coach, I could always feel when things weren't going well with certain players or parents. But if you're a parent, calmly talk to your coach. We can talk about the 24-hour rule, or in the first episode, you talked about the 48-hour rule that a coach used. That's beneficial to lower the heat level between parent coach. I never really had one of those rules. If someone wanted to talk to me, all I ever asked was, let's go talk away from everybody else. You can say whatever you want. I'll hear you out. Sometimes parents will give you, as a coach, they'll give you good information. Other times they're just going to vent. They're angry about something. They're going to vent. And I resided myself to just, all right, let them vent on me, not on an assistant coach, not on another parent. Let it come to me. I'll take it all in. And if I need to adjust what I do, then I adjust. But as a coach, I wouldn't take that. However they come at me, good or bad, I'm not going to come back angry at them. I'm just going to take it in. All right, what can I do better? What can you do better as a parent? And that generally makes for a better overall communication and sets up better relationships, for their child going forward. Because when you come at a coach angry, when I've been yelled at, trust me, I've been through a lot. I've had stuff thrown at me. I've had my life threatened as a coach.
Somebody, who I know you can't. You probably can't say.
I can't.
What is the context of that one?
And what did they throw?
Well,
is it the same person?
This is more as an administrator. No, it was different people. This is more as an administrator. I had to remove a volunteer coach because of the way he talked to kids and his overall sportsmanship. And I had to.
It wasn't me. No, it wasn't me.
I had to give him a call at work and say, "Hey, we kind of decided we need to go in a different direction because of X, Y, and Z, and you created an unsafe environment." And the immediate reply was, "Well, how about I come to where you were, and take the next step."
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it was like, well, okay, we ended up calling the police, and we had to have security at the next few games just to make sure that this person didn't show up, because that person had become that unhinged with literally playing rec basketball. And it that's just part of it, is that people get angry. And
they were a coach, or what were they doing?
This person was a volunteer coach.
Like a head coach?
and he would literally taunt other players on the court, opponents in a rec league. Like,
Oh my.
if a player's throwing free throws, he's banging his hand on the bench trying to distract
What?
the player from shooting a free throw. And mind you, these are kids in
Yeah.
junior high,
Oh,
and the
boy.
coach is doing this and yelling during people's free throws and arguing every single call. And it just got to a point where the
Yeah.
level of the lack of sportsmanship was just
asinine.
not tolerable, because it was either keep him as a coach or everybody else in the program quits. And
Yeah.
when you get to that, you have to make the tough decisions.
Yeah.
And there is a thing called Mean Girls, and that whole like verbal gossip bullying crap actually
Oh
still
my gosh.
exists. Like I think you were saying the
Oh,
other
it's out
day,
there.
Mark, like don't forget, bitches, that GoPro camera microphone is still on, motherfucker. I can hear you.
Well,
We're
and
going to
parents
hear
have
you.
to remember they have to remember, especially if you're at a baseball or softball game, everyone's got the camera up behind home plate, and if those mics are on, if you're probably within 20 or 30 feet, they're picking up everything you're saying. And there's been times where you can go back and listen to our old games in softball and like, did they really just say that about the coach or about the umpire? I can't believe so and so just said that. And those things are picking up. And I've been too close to those microphones too, and have said things that I've regretted. And hopefully nobody finds those
Yeah.
videos. So.
Who has those? Let's see.
Oh man.
They're
I just cancel one of our accounts.
And if you're a parent who if you bump at the gums a little bit too much, and you're just too damn proud to shut the fuck up. Let me put it to you like this: if you're at the age where your next level is actually the collegiate next level, understand this: how you act has a direct impact on whether or not your kid's going to get picked by that school. If you're an asshole, nobody's going to want to have you come to the new games and be like, oh, here comes Mr. and Mrs. Asshole. Like nobody's going to want that, because everybody knows what comes. The kid don't play well, that you're going to get the blame. If the kid is playing well but isn't seeing the field or ice, then all of a sudden trash starts to get, talk, and it becomes a cancer, and that shit spreads fast as hell. And not to mention the impact, by the way, not to mention the impact that kind of parental turmoil leaves on the kid. As I think, Mark, you would say, you could tell 100% of the time when an athlete's gripe is really theirs, or if it's something they heard their parents say.
Yep. And parents, when you're at home, watch what you say about coaches to your kids. In all my years, almost every time I've had an issue with a kid, it's things that they've said that I know for sure were being said at home, either about me, about coaches, or about other people that I'm associated with. And kids sponge that in, and they don't realize it. They just give that information out, and it's detrimental to them. And like you said, it could really affect down the road if they want to play at the next level beyond high school. It could definitely affect them in the future.
So 100% of time spent head coaching, what percentage would you say is having to manage damage control?
0.1%.
He's such a lioness.
No way.
Come on.
On the head coach side, I'd probably 10% of the time I'm dealing with different issues with players and parents. And
is that because you were at A level?
It's part of it.
A team?
No, I think any level you play, there's going to be the happy campers and the unhappy campers. And how you manage that is it tests you as a coach, and it tests my ability to manage those, how I take that in and internalize it, or keep my patience or blow up, which I rarely ever got upset as a coach. But if you set an expectation level, right? We expected this level out of our players. And if those players weren't hitting it, they knew they weren't going to play. And when those
some parents didn't quite get that,
or the player doesn't understand it. It's like, well, and like you talked about in your first episode, if people are paying to be there, they expect to play. But when you hit a certain level, the expectation to play there's got to be performance that meets that expectation too.
Yeah.
And those people were the ones that are going to give you the issues, but it's easier to deal with that because you've already set the bar. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
I lied and said, "Well, yeah, I'm going to play everybody every single game," and then I didn't, then that's on me as a coach, and I've got to board any negative comments that come my way. I've got to take that on.
Mm-hmm.
But we set a level, and if they didn't hit it, that's where most of the drama was. Now,
Yeah,
there's
but
always other stuff that
I've
comes
never seen you. I mean, I've seen you have to make that call where you said everybody. Not well. You've never said everyone's going to play. You'll say the best player will play. Period. You want that to be the hard part of your job is having to select who's in the lineup,
Yep.
right?
Right.
Yep.
You know, but I've never seen you make that decision. Number one, alone. You've always asked us as a and I've only endured 5 years of servitude with you, so it was just a small stint of slavery. But anyways, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's a fantastic experience. Completely. So, like, you were the right guy for the job for me, 100%. Said it from the start. I'll say it
you know
till
why?
more
You
than
know why I
likely.
always ask you guys for your input, right?
Just to make sure that what you already had written down was a good idea.
No. So when there was drama, I'd be like, "Well, go talk to Chris."
And
I made that decision.
And I said that many times, didn't I? If you have, tell them it was my idea and it was my turn in a rotation to go with whatever Coach Chris says. That way,
I'm just kidding.
Hey. But anyway, I've never seen you make that decision and not talk to the athlete first as an adult. Even if they were,
Most of the time.
well, if you did it, I've never seen you do it without talking to them first. You've always at least made sure they understood kind of what the whole point was, why they're there. You know what I'm saying? And then in turn, there were positions where it was, later on in the season where a lot of the kids were already committed and a couple were not, and they had to get priority in the lineup and playing time and so on because we got to get them recruited, right? So like there's a thing that you understand. And when you play, as you said, that level, people, while you're paying, when you're at the lower levels, you're just getting started. Yes, you're paying to play. Sort of. You're being a part of that opportunity to play. Or you're paying to be on the field or the ice or whatever. But when you get to that level, that elite, quote unquote, elite level where you start wearing your team's gear out to school and shit, you got to understand like what you're paying for is not to play. You're paying to have the opportunity to play, to compete against the best. Right. Because the thought is if you can beat out your own teammates, and you have a nice competitive fire with that and you can preach and teach that kind of culture, winning's easy. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know that, like you said earlier, like in the beginning, that concept going out there and doing things on your own time isn't what is happening anymore. So I don't know. I think parents got to understand what it means when you sign on for something like that. Shit's a commitment. Like that's cool, but you got to stay consistent with the process just the same for you and your child. Because without commitment, you won't start, and without consistency, you won't finish.
And there's a lot of great coaches out there that will do the things that we did, or probably coaches that are way better than I'll ever be, that they'll put any extra time into their kids, which is what we tried to do. And some kids still may come up short. And that's the reality of it. And as a parent, you got to prepare yourself for that.
And I think
it ends somewhere.
Yes, you have to prepare your kids for that too. You got 120 kids going out for a high school baseball team. They're all coming from these monster travel programs that are saying you're on track to be on this baseball team. Yet there's 120 of them there, and only what would you say, 24 or so make it. That's hard on a kid who's 16 years old, who has been playing baseball his entire life to get on the high school team. And then he's told but
that's another thing Mark set himself apart though. I've watched him parent and coach May, his oldest that was on the team with Mia. And then his son Primo's another fucking stud in the sport for some reason. Jesus, he just breeds winners. But he had the same conversation with him, right? What did you tell Primo about what to expect?
We knew at his high school there were a lot of really good baseball players trying out as freshmen, and we tried to prepare him that all right, they're only going to take 24 out of maybe it was 50. It's not quite as big as Plainfield North, but we tried to prepare him that hey, you either going to have to work really hard to get that spot, and if you get it, be thankful for it and continue to earn it after that. Don't just be like, hey, I got it, I'm just going to put it on cruise control. He had to work. He did not. He wasn't given every opportunity right at the beginning of the season, and he kept after it. And by the end of the season, he worked himself into their pitching rotation on a regular basis and earned the most improved player award. So I was really proud of him for that because he persevered. He understood that he had to work because they have a lot of good talent at their school, and it'll have to continue that way for the next 3 years for him too. So
now, how much work was he putting in on his own? It doesn't get any
easier for him. He works out most every day on his own at home. Private lessons a couple times a week, and they practice twice a week. So he's probably 6 days a week doing something either for his health related to baseball or
strength training,
baseball training. And that's the other thing with training is a lot of kids don't understand why they have to do certain training without a bat or a ball or a hockey stick. You know, it's, well, why am I not taking batting practice? Why can't I hit? I want to hit. A lot of those things that trainers like you all bring to the table make a difference in, all right, when it's time to put the bat and ball in your hand or the hockey stick in your hand, now it all comes together. This is why you did that training. And that's the hard part, is trying to work your way through all those little things that you have to do to get there. All those babies, all the stairs to get to the top of the top of the house or the top of the ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the times, just like for you adults who are going through your own fitness wars right now, getting there is not even the hard part. That's the easy part. Keep the perspective on that. The hard part is staying there.
Yep.
Okay,
and once
that's
you make
the hardest
that goal,
part.
Yeah.
Because nobody gives a shit, ever. It's you versus you, always and forever.
Yeah.
And if you think someone's coming to save you, you're out of your fucking mind. Because that person's coming to take your spot, period. I don't care if it's a job, that side chick at your husband's work. Look out of here. Everybody's on the block. You know what I'm saying? You got to fight for what's yours. Shit.
And like you said, you make your big goal is to make this team. You make it. You're not done yet. Like now you have to.
You got to keep going.
Yes, you got to keep earning your spot or your fitness journey. You lose the 20 pounds. Okay, what now? Like, what's next? Where are you going to go from here?
And I bet if you ask any of the girls that we coach that are playing in college right now, how many of their teammates or coaches have asked them, hey, what tournaments did you win at 12U, 13U, 14U? Nobody. They don't care because they want your performance right now, and they're out looking for the girl to take your spot next year and the year after. So if you want it, the players have got to keep earning that time and working for it because it's not going to let up until you quit doing it. Until your time is up.
Yep.
And don't misunderstand this either, parents. But the transfer portal has forced coaches to stay on their game just as well. I mean, they have to be a part of the recruiting process too. They want to be known as a place that bigger schools, better schools with bigger, better money can come to get your player. So everybody is alive and on that ticket. That's the good news. The bad news is, transfer portals for college kids kind of equates to free agency, for professional sports. And so it can get political kind of quick. But at the end of the day, if you put the work in and you're actually performing, you have to show out when it's game time. And if you're doing that, it gets kind of hard to look the other way. I think even the best coaches will tell you that. Everyone's looking for that dime. I mean, are they still, well, I don't know that. Mark, are they still, would you say like the head cheese coaches are still looking for that diamond in the rough, or because of the portal and that, are they taking, they know they've got some options so they don't look as hard?
That's a good question. I don't have it. We should get Margie Wright on here to answer that question.
Who's Margie Wright again? Can you tell everybody? Because they don't know.
Oh, she's only one of the Hall of Fame women's softball coaches. When she retired, she had the most collegiate wins of all time, which she has since been passed by a couple people. She lives in our area and is one of the
fantastic
most amazing
lady.
people I met. And once I got to know Margie as a person and as a coach, she totally influenced a lot of the things that I did as a coach. She really changed the way I think of things and how I see things and how I actually taught my players once they hit the level of competition that I felt that they can get to. That having a mentor like Margie Wright was game-changing for me.
So at the end of the day, wrapping it up, don't let your kid be an asshole. Don't let your kid give you excuses. You're a parent. Be a parent first. Teach them the discipline at home and how to, if you fall 9, get up 10, right? Put the work in. Be a good teammate. You don't want to be the one player on your team that succeeds and nobody gives a shit because you're an asshole. So be a good teammate. Everybody wins together kind of deal, right? Pay the money, be expected to pay more money, and then pay more money again. Right?
Oh God, it's
Hey,
so
or
sad.
monitor the burnout.
Oh yes.
Yes, and monitor,
Because
right,
it's
watch
easy to
out.
say, well, you got to do this, this, and that. You got to keep going and keep going. And a lot of kids will burn out. And when they get to 8th grade, freshman, sophomore year of high school, they burn out to the point where they're done playing.
Yeah.
And we've seen it happen many, many times.
And that's where
you can look
injuries come.
statistically, the drop off statistically is like 40 or 50%, probably
Jeez.
greater in some sports, that when they hit that high school, that 8th grade to sophomore year of high school, the participation drops off tremendously. And a lot of that could be due to burnout, especially in the travel sports nowadays, because you can do a sport year round.
Yeah.
If you want it. And there's advantages and a lot of disadvantages to doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, playing, that was a discussion a little while back.
Podcast.
It is, you know, should an athlete play multi-sport or just be one? Like that's a whole other thing. We'll get into that one another time. But you should be able to play multiple sports. You should be active every single fucking day. Yes. End of discussion.
And
Fight me on
I agree.
But part 3, we're going to go into some like real practical tips and tricks for if you are getting into youth sports, if you're looking at youth sports, if you're already in it, just some types of ways to navigate that world. So
I appreciate you guys having me on.